today we're going to talk about budgets again. And the reason we are doing this is because it was our very first Instagram Live, and unfortunately we went so long, so we had so much to say, that we weren't able to record it and show it back, and so many people wanted to ask questions and hear it, and so we are going to redo it. As you can see, I am solo today. Amanda is out of town, so I will be doing it alone. But I do have my very festive trusty reindeers. And of course, I'm doing red today. I was feeling very festive. I was out Christmas shopping earlier trying to get it all finished. So doing the red today. Hopefully you guys are having something fun too. So let me just get our budget up here and then we will get started. As always, feel free to submit your questions and we will answer them. I'm going to kind of breeze through this a little quicker than we did last time just because we ran out of time, but I'm going to try to cover all the highlights. But budgets are so important. It is like the most important thing when you start planning your wedding. And when I got into this industry, the very first wedding I planned, whole wedding budget was $15,000. And we planned a really great wedding. So things have changed. That was 16 years ago. Things have gotten a lot more expensive, and it was funny because once the budget started going up from there, I remember when I got my first $50,000 budget, I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. This is like so much money. And then of course now, unfortunately, I do recognize it is a lot of money, but when you start actually talking about planning a wedding and all of the people that are involved and booking your vendors and start putting the dollars into each of the categories, it adds up so quickly. We're noticing a trend for 2020 called micro weddings. I did not term that. I'm not sure who did, but I love the name. So the concept is people are using the same amount of money from a budgetary perspective. So let's take 50 grand for instance, but they're having a much smaller wedding. So they're inviting a lot less people. So 50 to 60 people I would consider a micro wedding. And you're just able to do so much more when you cut that guest count. And I think we're noticing that our older couples that are starting to get married a little later in life, early mid-30s, are really going for the quality people at their wedding, not the quantity. And it just gives you so much more freedom. We realize not everybody's in a situation to cut their guest list to that. I will tell you, I just went through the wedding planning process myself. I got married in November and I had a lot of freebies just because of the industry I'm in. I had a free band, one of the best bands in the country. I had a free photographer, one of our most favorite photographers. I had free invitations, all kinds of discounts and comps from Instagram type people for posts and things. And our wedding still came out to $50,000, and that was with all that free stuff. So it probably would have been a $100,000 wedding had we had to pay for all of those things, and we only had 65 people. So I get it, and when I did my budget for my wedding, with taking into consideration all of those vendors that were contributing, I was blown away when I got the number at the end. I was like, I cannot believe this. So I am definitely sensitive to the subject, just going through the process. But I do want to kind of take you through doing a budget and sort of talk to you. When we work with our clients, we try to be very upfront about what we feel like they can do. If they come to us with a certain amount of money and we don't feel like they can do the wedding for that, we let them know right away. We don't want to set any unrealistic expectations or upset anyone or make anyone think that we can do it. I think that once we go through this exercise, you'll see kind of where I'm coming from, but I personally feel like a good starting budget, which again, I realize not everyone has this is just more of an educational type thing, is $85,000, is like a starting point. And that's to just kind of do some nice things, not have a huge guest count, it'll be pretty, you'll be able to do a couple extra detail type things that's not like, blowing it out of the water. I think that if you get into the six figures, which a lot of our clients are, that gives them a lot more freedom to do other things that they want. And the thing is that when people are planning weddings and they see all these amazing details and all this cool stuff on Pinterest or Instagram, all of those things add up. So, it's just, even just the bare bones basics, it gets really hard to plug all the numbers in and make them work. So we're very upfront with our clients from that standpoint. I also want to share a little bit with you kind of what you can expect from a vendor standpoint when you are planning your wedding and what to expect. Because we have a lot of clients that come to us with a budget, or sometimes they say we don't have a budget, which is our favorite. And they'll come to us with a budget and they say, you know, we really don't know what things cost. And then when I tell them and walk them through it, they're like, okay, yeah, you know, we can do that. Or sometimes people are in positions where they're like, we absolutely cannot go over this number. And so then we make recommendations of vendors that, you know, we typically have to cut, or changes we need to make, things such as going from a band to a DJ, or unfortunately, we love our videographers, and it's probably my biggest regret not having one at my own wedding. However, it's one of those things that, you know, a photographer is a have to have, a videographer is a nice to have. And so, you know, that's just something to consider. We recognize too, like, a wedding planner is a luxury item. Also, you don't have to have a wedding planner to plan a wedding. You have to have a photographer. However, in our world, we feel like you have to have a wedding planner to plan a wedding, because we're going to save you time, we're going to save you money, we're going to make sure you don't make mistakes. A great wedding planner should always try to negotiate on your behalf and leverage their relationships with their vendors in their particular market, you know, and help you look at things differently and come up with creative ideas like, oh, you're getting married on this day. I found out there's a wedding the night before yours. Let's see if that bride wants to do market lights too, and then maybe we could share in the cost and they can just leave them up, you know, things like that. So we do feel like, even though we are a luxury item, it's kind of like a major necessity. And I feel like if you talk to people that hired a great planner, they would say that it was probably one of the best decisions that they made. And there's probably a lot of people that didn't hire a planner that wish they did. So, and I'd say, you know, my personal opinion is there's planners all over the country, so many amazing, talented people, such a wide range of price ranges. Personally, I feel like in my particular market, wedding planners, you know, pretty reputable wedding planners, you can expect to pay anywhere from $6,500 to $20,000. There's definitely planners in other markets that charge a lot more than that. Sometimes if it's a more grandiose wedding, you know, that can play into the planner's cost as well, but that's kind of a good range of what to expect. I feel like if you're paying much less than that, you might want to question their knowledge, their expertise, you know, their experience. There are a lot of part-time planners that have other full-time jobs, or people that want to dabble in it, or someone who planned their wedding and now all of a sudden they want to be a wedding planner. We've seen it all. So just make sure you do your due diligence. And I'd say, you know, just like you would in buying anything, don't always, you know, focus on the price. We all know the saying, you get what you pay for, and I'd say when it comes to a wedding planner, that is for sure true. So I'm going to take you through a little exercise, try to make it quick so that I can leave some time at the end to answer any budget questions that you guys have. So like I said, a good reputable wedding planner is going to be in that range. So what I am going to do is start going through some numbers with you of what you can expect, you know, when it comes to a planner. So let's just take the middle price. Let's say $8,500, okay, for your planner. There's lots of things that we have in our budgets that our clients don't necessarily include in their budget, but things to think about. I'll mention them as we're going through. I don't necessarily feel like they should be included in a wedding budget, because then it's becoming like your budget's like really dwindling, because an engagement party, for instance, that's kind of not part of the wedding budget, but something to think about. You know, a lot of people have engagement parties, so we'll skip over that. Wedding gowns, such a wide range, but I would say on average, you could get, you know, a great gown, and you could get great gowns for less than this and for more, but I'm going to put $3,500 in. We see that alterations are usually around $750, really depends on how intricate your dress is, but $500 to $700, so I'm going to put that in. Jewelry and accessories, I mean, such a huge gamut, because we have clients that want to wear Louboutins, and then clients that could care less about shoes. So we always try to find that out when we're budgeting, because if we think you're going to do, you know, Badgley Mishkas and the $300 price point, and you want the Christian Louboutins, that's like $1,000 difference. So we'll be reasonable. For veil, jewelry, and shoes, we're gonna say $1,000. Okay, groom's attire. Typically, we don't put that in the budget. Here's why. Usually, our grooms these days are buying their tuxes or suits or having custom things made, which we are huge supporters of. I always say, like, it's not fair that the bride gets to walk down the aisle in this brand new beautiful dress and the groom has to wear a tux that like some, you know, kid barfed on at prom last weekend. So I say, if you can swing it, definitely try to get your, you know, a custom suit or tux. We would sort of expect like the groom to pick up that cost, not to come out of the bride's budget. So we typically don't include that. Hair and makeup, and just note, if you do rent a tux or suit as a groom, typically if you rent 4 or more from a specific store, they will comp yours for free, which is great. Okay, hair and makeup. Totally depends. I have brides that are like, I love so-and-so on Instagram from LA. Okay, that's gonna be a little different budgeting for that person than somebody here in the Colorado market. So in this market, I would say all our clients do hair and makeup trials. It's a mess. And by the time you do the hair and makeup trial and pay for the lashes and all this stuff on the day of, we usually budget somewhere, I'm just gonna say, around $300 per service. So $300 for hair, $300 for makeup. Hard to find it for less. Maybe you could. I think that's a reasonable, you know, budget. Rings, another thing we don't budget for. We kind of feel like, you know, these days we have a lot of working couples, a lot of actually very good, successful working couples that can afford their own wedding rings. So we typically don't put that in the budget, but I'd say depending on the ring, most bands will be somewhere between $500 and $1,000. Again, depends on, or if you can get your guy to like the rubber rings from Amazon, they're like 20 bucks. Okay, save the dates, depends on what you want to do, how creative you want to get. So let's just base this on a 150-person wedding. Let's assume most people are couples, so that would be 75 save the dates, but we also know most people aren't couples. So let's assume 100, and you just wanted to do something like cute, nothing too crazy. I'm gonna say $500. Invitations, you can go all over the board on those, but we tend to see that a typical invitation set for everything, for, you know, a nice invitation is gonna be somewhere around $20 a set. And of course it can go up. We've had clients spend triple that. We've had clients spend less than that. I'm just trying to give you kind of a realistic range. So that's $2,000 for invitations. Then we have things like ceremony programs, place cards, menu cards, you know, escort cards. So escort card tells you what table to sit at, place card tells you where to sit at the table numbers, kind of all the other printed stuff. We sort of gauge it more on a per head cost. So we kind of group it together and we take the guest count and then we multiply about what we think the person will spend. I would say it's about $10 a head. Again, are you doing leather menus? That would be cool, but not everybody's doing that. So could you spend more? Yes. Could you spend less on minted? Yes. But this is kind of a, you know, a good solid range. Guest book, I mean, you know, some people do them, some people don't. I'm not a huge fan unless you do something like really creative. So I will just, let's just say you got like a really awesome book from Artifact Uprising and you put all your engagement photos in it and everybody signed it or something like that. $250. Okay, so something to clarify on the budget thing. I'm just going to do kind of a general budget. The thing is a venue and a hotel are very different. So some things to think about when you're booking your venue. When you go into a hotel, they usually have chairs and tables and linens and china and silver and flatware and glassware and all of that stuff, which is great. And so, you know, that's definitely a money savings. Of course, if you like everything, I'd say most of our clients don't like hotel ballroom chairs and they always rent linen. So those are the two things for sure. Then obviously people are starting to really get into tabletop design, which we love as well. The black matte fork with the gold tip, a charger, you know, a gold rimmed glass, a colored water glass. All of that stuff adds up, of course. But if you go into a hotel versus going into a venue, you are going to get some of those things included. If you go into a venue, usually they'll provide tables and chairs and that's it. So you are renting linens and china and flatware and glassware and all of that stuff. So we're going to assume that you're going into a venue, and we're going to kind of take like the average venue cost of some of the more popular venues here in Colorado. So I am going to put $9,500 for venue rental. It's really tough to find a venue that does less than that. But when you do the ceremony and reception in the same place, obviously that saves a lot of money. And if you do the venue offsite or at a church, usually that's a $1,200 to $1,500, addition. So what I'm going to do is just say we're going into a venue, we're having the ceremony and reception in the same place, and we're paying that venue rental fee. A lot of venues require insurance, which we always suggest. It's $175. You can get it from WedSafe or your homeowners, and it really can save you. We were like sweating it right before our weddings. All these storms were coming in on the West Coast, and we were like just on the tail end of hurricane season. And we were like, oh my God, we need to get venue insurance. Like, what happens if our venue blows away? So it is definitely a good thing to get. Okay, officiants. Our favorite officiants like $900, but there are officiants around $500. So I'm gonna put $750, just as kind of a general rule for a great officiant. Okay, photography. This is a hard one. So we have photographers that we have worked with who are amazing that charge $5,000. Now, when you're paying a photographer that amount, you are not getting an album, which a lot of our clients do forego albums so they can get a better photographer for, a lower price, but then they can get sort of all their images on like a USB or on an online gallery, and then they can go make canvas wraps or blow up the prints or make their own albums. A lot of our clients do that. Albums are like at least $1,500. That's where they start with a photographer. They take a ton of time. So if you are trying to save money on photography, that's a good thing to cut. But we feel like, there's amazing photographers all over the board. Some of the higher end ones are in the $25,000. So you have to figure out, what is most important to you. So I am going to say $8,500 for photography. That will get you a great photographer. I do feel like some of the film photographers are going to be more. They're going to start to be into the 11, 12, which is understandable. Film is very expensive and it takes a lot of time. So we're just going to use that as kind of a basis. Video. So we work with one particular video group that is amazing and charges $3,500, and we love them and they're amazing. And there's other videographers we love that charge twice that. And sometimes our clients can't afford it. So we love having this group that does great work and charges that amount. However, some of our other favorite videographers, when that's like really important to our clients and they do have the budget, it's going to be, a bit higher. So we're talking maybe $6,500 to $7,500. There's definitely videographers that charge more, just like the photographers. So we're going to say $6,500. Okay, so for a venue, we're assuming a caterer is being brought in. So when you go into a hotel, food and beverage is at a premium. And so you have to kind of consider, weigh your pros and cons. There's times I've done two types of budgets for clients. I've done a hotel budget and a venue budget. And it's maybe been like a $1,500 difference. So it's not a huge difference because there's things that are bonuses with a hotel and there's bonuses with a venue. But we're going to assume you're bringing a caterer in. You want to do a plated dinner, so you want to do a sit down, you want hors d'oeuvres during cocktail hour, you're going to have at least a 5-hour event, you're having a full open bar, and food is important to you, but it's not like, the most important. The bar is the most important, like, let's be honest. Okay, so we are going to assume $100 a head with your 150 person guest count, so that is $15,000. Now, that is kind of on the lower end. I do feel like, it could creep up. Maybe I feel like 110, 125 a person is probably a little more realistic, but, we're not going to go crazy here. Wedding cake, there's definitely ways to save here. People do smaller cakes, just to cut, and then they do sheet cakes in the back, which actually when caterers cut up the sheet cakes, they look better anyway. They look like so pretty and clean versus like chopping up a wedding cake. So I definitely suggest that. No one will ever know. Unless a client comes to me and is like, oh my gosh, I want this like 5-tier like showstopper cake, then okay. And typically those are actually made out of styrofoam anyway, just because it just makes more sense. And then the sheet cakes are in the back and they put one little section where the person cuts. So, but I'd say, you know, there's some amazing bakers in Colorado that are charging $20 a slice, and it's amazing, but your client really has to care about cake. We work with a particular bakery that we love that's, you know, a little more reasonable, and our clients don't tend to be really into cake. They like dessert stations and more creative ideas. So we're gonna say $10 a slice for easy math for me. For your 150 person guest count, we're gonna assume you're a client who cares what the cake looks like and you want it to look like a real cake. So then your bar. So you go into a venue, typically a lot of the venues in Colorado have like beverage services, and so you have to work with them, and that's fine, they're great, but I'd say it's a little more expensive than if you got to bring in the alcohol on your own. Unless you're like a total wine snob, which I am, you could do an open bar for about $25 a head. So you could go into like a liquor store or wholesale type situation, and you can do a full open bar for about $25 a head. So we are going to say that you care a little more about alcohol, and we're going to go 35 a head and 150 people, and so you're looking at about 5,500. Okay, entertainment. We are going to assume you want a band, and you're getting a band from Colorado, and we're just going to use an average price for, you know, a great band in Colorado. It's $9,500. Definitely bands that are more. We tend to bring a lot of bands in from other states when our clients, you know, have the budget to do that. But if you're trying to hire a good solid band in Colorado, and obviously there's a lot of factors, like where are you having the wedding? Are you getting married up in Aspen? That of course can affect the price. We're gonna say $9,500 for ease, and we're gonna say $750 for cocktail hour and $750 for ceremony, because obviously you need that as well. Some of the bands in Colorado will include that for you, and that's great. But for now, we're gonna assume that you wanna bring in strings for cocktails and ceremony, and then your bands, of course, will play there. Here's one of those other things that we don't budget for, but something to consider: childcare. You know, that's just kind of one of those like nice to have, but don't have to have. But just think about your personal situation and your wedding, and if that's something you're gonna need to budget for. Okay, transportation. So we're gonna assume you need to do transportation. And we look at transportation as kind of a per head count situation. So we think that transportation, typically, depending on what you get, is somewhere around $35 a person. Again, depends on what you get. We're using an average. So that's about $52.50 for transportation. So we're gonna just put that number in. Okay, rentals. Huge differential here. Are you doing a tent? That's obviously a huge cost. If you're doing a subfloor in a tent, that is a really huge cost. We're going to assume no tent. We're going to assume that you don't like the chairs at the venue, you want to rent linens, and you want to bring in some of the tabletop stuff. So, or you have to. Let's assume china, silver, flatware, glassware, all of that stuff. So we are going to put about $20 a head in for the tabletop stuff, so that's about $3,000, and then we're going to put another $2,500 for linens. Depends on what you pick. That's kind of on the low end of what we typically do, but we're going to use that for now. Okay, so and then obviously if you have a venue where you don't have to do that, that's okay too. Okay, so flowers for 150 person wedding. We kind of feel like anything under $8,500 for flowers is going to be tough, and that's not even like blowing it out of the water. I will say that on average, I feel like our clients spend somewhere around $15, but we've had clients spend way more, and of course we have clients that spend less. So I'm just going to use an average of $15 for floral, and then when it comes to decor, that can be draping, furniture, installations, all types of stuff. So for decor, depending on what our clients want to do, let's just say they want to do a lounge area or two, we're going to put in $3,500. And then lighting, let's say they just want to do up lights and pin spots, we're going to put another $3,500. Obviously, like I said, we've definitely spent more. We've spent less on floral decor and lighting, a little bit tougher. So I really feel like those are pretty realistic numbers. Parents' gifts, bridal party gifts, guest favors, all of that stuff I'm not going to put in this budget because, again, those are kind of things we leave out, and then we let the client, kind of depend on their situation, what they want to do for that. We don't tend to do a lot of favors. We do welcome bags or like really cool like guest experience type things to wow people versus, spending money on like a little thing that's typically left behind. Rehearsal dinner, we're not going to put in here because the groom's parents typically cover that. Brunch, we're not going to put in here because we are talking specifically a wedding budget. And so those are things to consider when you are doing these multiple events, that it's the more events you start putting into this budget, the more you're taking away from kind of the core things that you need. So we're just focusing on the wedding for now. Travel and accommodations, we don't typically put that in there. So airfare and rental cars and things like that. I mean, something you might want to consider, but again, that's kind of one of those costs we feel like brides and grooms can cover. Honeymoon, we don't put in the budget. A lot of our clients wait to take honeymoons for various reasons. They'll wait a year after the wedding. Or depending, they're getting married at a certain time when where they want to go isn't a good time to go at that time. So we notice that a lot of our clients are picking up that cost. So we don't put that in the wedding budget. So I have not even done any of the extra things. And the extra things, I'm talking photo booths, video booths, whiskey stations, cigar rollers, beer donkeys, I mean, you name it, all those fun extra things. Welcome bags, which a lot of our clients like to do. All the little detail things, the Etsy things, the cocktail napkins, the koozies, which we're not really a huge fan of, to be honest. We throw away a lot of koozies. We can think of something else. And we hate seeing our clients waste money on that stuff. It is super cute, we agree, but just, it's such a waste. So anyway, because we're running a little short on time and I want to give an opportunity to answer some questions, I am not going to put in kind of all those ancillary things because we could literally sit here for hours coming up with all kinds of cool ideas and details, and everybody's situation is different. But I am currently at 110,000. So when I said that I feel like 50's tough, 85 is a good starting point, you can see I'm starting to get into the six figures, and hopefully nothing I said sounded like super outlandish. Obviously, if we went back and we cut, the floral to, something a little less, let's just say you could only spend 10. Okay, that's fine. And let's say that you don't really want any decor and you're doing a hotel ballroom, so you just want really minimal lighting. Those types of things. I'm starting to get it down under the 100 mark. So there are ways to get it down. Obviously, I said getting rid of the videographer is something that, or changing from band to DJ are things we can do to get that number down. But this is just kind of a good exercise for people to see, wow, how it really, really adds up. So I have like 10 to 15 minutes for questions. So what kind of questions have people been asking?
I think a real good one that I saw was to talk about the number one or top budget driver. So what jacks a budget up, and what's the number one thing people can do to cut a budget? Okay,
that's a great question. Something that jacks a budget up. So some of the things I already mentioned. If you're doing a photographer and a videographer, once our clients say they're doing a videographer, we know right away we need to at least have another $3,500 to $7,500 for a videographer. So that is something that we would cut. The venue, we have clients come to us sometimes and they've already booked their venue and they've told us their budget and they've given their venue, a good chunk of that. that makes it really tough on us. And that's why we always feel like you should hire a planner first so that we can realistically set a budget for you, show you what you should spend in each category, and then align yourself with venues that fit into that, into that budget. So I would say venue cost is something that can really drive it up. I'd say if you can get away with doing a type of wedding where there is no transportation involved, you just saved yourself $5,000 to $6,000. So that's a great thing. And also like dress. I mean, there are definitely times that we have clients come to us and they spend $11,000 on a dress, and we would have never recommended that. And so that's something to consider, how important that is. So those are probably the big things I would say. Also, of course, like we mentioned earlier, the micro wedding, your guest count, number one. I mean, when you start getting into the 150, 200, 250, you're basically taking that dollar amount and you're depleting it. I think realistically, I look at guests at a wedding like little pieces of money running around. So if you have 150 people and you have $150,000 budget, because I don't have a calculator, so I need to do easy math in my head. I think that's right. Then we look at each person there as $1,000. So if you're letting your friends bring their, latest and greatest Bumble date, I hope you really like your friend, because that person who may not be here 6 months from now is costing you $1,000. So you really need to look at that and really think about, after you get married, after you've spent all this money, are you ever going to see these people again? Are you ever going to talk to them again? Who's going to be there for you and support you through the good times, the bad times? Who are you going to spend your, years going through your marriage and your life and maybe children and all kind of, your life stuff with? Or are you never going to talk to these people again? So that's so important because I feel like smaller weddings, you can just do so much more with your money than these, bigger guest counts. And I think even now, 150 years ago, it was not that big. And I think now people are starting to feel like it is. So that is the first thing I would do, is look at that guest list and really determine, who it is that needs to be at this event, for sure.
Great. Another interesting question was about room blocks, and do you account for that in the budget? Or if you could address room blocks and
Sure.
how they work and how that affects the
Yeah,
wedding financially.
so I talked a lot about room blocks in my last Instagram Live, which I will put up, because our last week, if you missed it, was about what things you should consider when you're picking a wedding date and a wedding venue. And we talked about room blocks a little bit. No, we do not budget for room blocks. It is, in our experience, the guest's responsibility to pay for their own room. There are times when clients sign room block contracts. So there's 2 types of blocks: complimentary, where they say, hey, we'll give you 10 rooms, and if you don't book them, no problem, we'll release them and you're off the hook. Then there are others that say, yeah, we'll give you this many rooms, but you are financially committing to booking a certain percentage of them. It's typically an 80-20, sometimes a 90-10, which just means if you hold 20 rooms, you are responsible for booking 80%. That's 16 rooms. If you only book 10, you're paying for the other 6 rooms. So that is something to consider when you're doing your room blocks. But the only time room blocks become financial, kind of not like a burden, but financially from a budget standpoint to our clients, is when our clients have to front the room block revenue, which does happen. So there's kind of like a revenue commitment, and the client has to front that. And then as your guests start booking, then obviously that goes away. So in a way, it's kind of a wash. It's just kind of like you're committing to this, and then as your guests book, so you're not really paying for it. You're kind of, it's almost like an insurance policy to the hotel. But no, we do not put any money in for room blocks. And when it comes to the bride and groom suite, I mean, a lot of times when we do room blocks, we can get their room comped the night of the wedding. We can get it comped the night before. That's kind of a standard in our industry. If a client, holds a certain amount of rooms, let's say the client's going to book 95 room nights, we for sure would be like, okay, we want, for every 40 room nights we book, we want a comped room, or we want an upgrade to a suite, or there's lots of things you can do in your room blocks, to kind of sweeten the deal a little, but it's not something that we budget for. And typically we see that our clients either pay for their room the weekend of their wedding, or the parents will pay for it, and it doesn't really come out of the budget.
Great. Another interesting question is about the things brides and grooms are spending their high dollar items on now in a wedding. Is it the dress, or how has it changed? I guess that would be more the question. Is it more the experience, or is it more like, hey, this is our day?
So I say for sure guest experience is huge. It's huge to us too. Years ago, we had clients that would say, well, it's my wedding and, I want it this way. And we would be like, okay, yeah, I mean, you're right. Now, if they said that, we'd be like, no, it's not. I mean, it is, you know what we mean. But like, all these people are spending all this money to travel and be there with you. Like, it is important to think about them, to think about the logistics involved, moving them around, the cost involved with the overall weekend. So we put a huge emphasis on the guest experience. And I would say most of our clients that come to us now, that is something they mention. When I say, what are your top 3 non-negotiable, like most important things when it comes to your wedding? All of them are saying the guest experience. We want them to have fun. We want to spend time with them. We don't want to just see them on the wedding day. And we love that because we agree with that too. So that is a huge emphasis, is, making sure that we put a focus on the guest. Did I answer that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
So if there's, I don't have a whole, there are a number of other questions.
Sure, you can pick a couple others.
Okay.
Yeah. Why don't we do 3 more?
3 more. Okay. Yeah. Here's a good one. Band versus DJ, or both.
Both if you have the money.
Okay. How, can you break that down on like how that percentage of the budget, or like average dollars? Yeah. Okay, average dollars. So there are a lot of bands that you can negotiate with, because a lot of bands these days aren't just like one-off bands. They're part of production companies. They have DJs like in their arsenal. So when you book the band, you can say, hey, look, during your band breaks, we don't want like an iPod. During the first hour of dinner, I'm not usually, unless my clients can afford it, I'm not a huge fan of wasting the band during the first hour of dinner when people are trying to talk and sit, unless it's a Jewish wedding. I could do a whole nother Instagram live on how different they are. They like to walk in the room and start dancing right away. So whenever we have Jewish clients, I have a different answer. But for, just this particular question, I would say you can usually negotiate a DJ with the band and tell them, hey, we want the DJ to MC, which is great, because we have some bands that are great at MCing and some of them like not so good. And I always like someone there, so when the band goes away, if someone all of a sudden decides to do an impromptu toast, or the bride and groom are like, hey, we want to cut our cake now, it's nice to have someone there like being able to MC that. So having them MC, play during the band breaks, it just gives better energy. And then sometimes play like an hour or 2 after the band ends, or go into an after party. So if you can do both, I say for sure both. There's been situations, unfortunately, in the past where my clients hated their band, and we had a DJ and we literally ended the band. Like, we were like, okay, we know we like paid you to play for another hour, but you're not great. And so we're going to start the DJ. And it was like a lifesaver. So if you can do it, do both. If you get a DJ through a band, I'd say it's probably another $1,500. So if you had a $9,500 band, $1,500 for a DJ. If you want a really great DJ, so kind of leaving that kind of component out, our favorite DJs are $2,500 to $3,500. And then of course, if you're getting into celebrity DJs, or you want like Paris Hilton at your wedding, it's going to be much higher. Okay, I think we have a few foodies viewing, and a couple of questions about food, and I think I'll consolidate. Best way to, or best value in determining how you want to do food, and based on our recent experience, is that a food station, is that sit down, plated, or what are some ways to stretch that dollar if food's important to you? Okay, so here's the short answer on the food thing. People will come to us and they think buffets are cheaper. They're not. And again, sometimes I do a buffet wedding and a sit-down wedding, and I show.
Food stations are the most expensive. Way to go. But the most fun. It is our favorite. That's what we did at our own wedding. We're not even foodies. Like, my husband's gluten-free and dairy-free, and I don't really care about food. I care, like, about the wine. So we didn't really care about food, but people raved about our food. And I think it was because we did food stations. People could eat at their leisure. And we tried to do really fun, like, approachable things, but with a little bit of a, upscale twist. And I will say too, the food was amazing. I think food stations are my favorite, but they are the most expensive. Here's why. Usually they have to be chef attended. You have to pay for that person. It's similar to a buffet in the way that you have to have enough of everything for everyone. So the reason the food on a buffet typically is higher is because if you have 7 things on a buffet, you have to have enough of each of the 7 things for someone, each 150, let's use, for each of those 150 people to go. Sometimes people go back. When you do a sit down, they know you need 50 of these and 40 of those and 30 of those, which really cuts down on food costs. However, you need more staff. So at a sit down, you obviously need more people serving, whereas buffet, you need more food. And food stations is kind of like both, together. So you still need a lot of staff because you have chef attended, you've got people running back and forth filling the different food stations, you've got live action type things, but you also have servers going around picking up plates, because people are going back or they just went to one and now they're going to the other. So it's kind of combining both of those situations, which is why it's more expensive. So I'd say if you have the money, go the food station route. I've never been a huge buffet fan, but I'd say from a value perspective, I'd say buffet over sit down, because one of the other things you have to think about too is less servers, more food, less servers, but also typically, unless the person, someone's trying to save money on food, they're probably not going crazy with tabletop. And when you do a buffet, you don't necessarily need all the different forks and knives and, glasses and things. Usually people keep it pretty simple. Some caterers will put the silverware on the buffet. Some people want it sat. You have a water glass, a wine glass, you're good to go. Versus a sit down, you've got all the forks and the things and the glasses and the charger and all that stuff. So I'd say from a value perspective, buffet.
Okay, so last one.
Mm-hmm.
It is engagement season, from
Yes.
what I understand.
Yes.
So someone may be getting something in about a week under the tree, or
yeah.
a New Year's proposal.
Yeah.
For those people who are newly engaged, coming up in the next few weeks,
Mm-hmm.
what would you recommend the first 3 things they need to do to make sure that they have an adequate budget?
Sure.
How should they approach their wedding?
Okay, so first 3 things, like right after you get engaged, or specifically in regards to money?
What's going to drive the cost? Like, does the date drive the cost, or is it the venue, or is it both?
Okay, so I would say for sure, if you're just getting engaged, obviously, like, hire a wedding planner. That's the first thing you should do. Like, seriously, I'm not even kidding. Like, us or someone else, just hire a great wedding planner, because it is going to save you so much time, so much money. We have all the relationships. We know what venues are already booked. We are still getting calls for people for 2020, which is tough because 2020 is really getting maxed out, but people getting engaged, they don't want to wait till 2021. Like, that seems like forever ago. But our 2020 clients, we've been working with them for 6 to 9 months. So there are a lot of places that are already gone. But I would say from a financial perspective, after you get engaged, the first 3 things you need to do is talk to, a lot of families are contributing to budgets now. It's not just always on the bride's family, or the groom and the groom, or the bride and the bride, whatever situation you're in. So I would say talk to all the families, find out what they can contribute. Now, this is why I say hiring a wedding planner is smart, because we can tell you what it's going to cost. So then you can go to the families and say, hey, here's what it's going to cost. Like, what can everybody contribute? So that is something to talk about. I see a lot of groom's parents contributing more than just the rehearsal dinner. I see it being split between bride and groom, bride's parents and groom's parents. I see bride and groom's, subsidizing the whole thing. So all different situations. Then I would say guest count. Get all the people. Who do you want to invite? Here's who we want. Here's who you want. Here's who you want. Put it all together and look at it. And you might be like, oh my God, 300 people. Like, absolutely not. Pare that list down. Like, get it down. Really, really think where you want to do it. And then I'd say, to be honest, if you are trying to plan a wedding like where you live, the best way that you could have a fabulous wedding and cut down on your guest count and maximize your budget, destination wedding all the way, because you are going to lose people. The people that are important to you and that should be there and want to be there will be. And immediately, like depending on the location that you pick, you can do so much more with your budget doing a destination wedding versus like getting married in, you know, the place you grew up and then you have to invite all these other people. We are huge proponents, if people are open to it, to pushing destination weddings on people. And I will tell you, like, our favorite destination where you can literally get the most for your money and have an amazing wedding, amazing experience is by far Mexico. Like, all areas, we love Sayulita, Cabo, I mean, all areas of Mexico, but things there are just so much cheaper, but still, like, you can elevate the experience. So those are the things that I would think about.
Great.
Is that it?
That's
Thank you guys so much for joining me again. I'm so sorry to have repeated something we talked about a couple weeks ago, but hopefully this was helpful. If you have any other questions that I didn't answer, I am happy to answer them. If you want to reach out to me via email, heather@table6productions.com. And I'm happy to answer questions for people who aren't our clients, because I appreciate you watching. And if there's ever a subject matter you want us to talk about, please feel free to submit. We will be here. Wait, okay, I think maybe, so next Wednesday is Christmas. Maybe we'll do like a fun little Instagram-y live. We'll think of something. And then the next Wednesday after that is New Year's. So maybe we'll think of something fun for that. We'll keep it short and sweet. But hope everybody has a great rest of the week. Reach out with any further questions. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next week, hopefully. Bye. How'd it go? Amanda texted me in the middle of it, and it like stumbled me up. I saw it